Hey everybody, it's Matthew with Z1. Today we're going to do an installation on our Z1 oil cooler kit. Today the kit we're putting on is on a 2008 350Z with the HR motor, and our particular assortment that we have here, we're going with the thermostatic sandwich plate, we're going with the braided lines that have the protective wrap, and we're using the 25-row the Z1 Pro Cooler specifically. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into that for the install today. Obviously today we have the luxury of using a lift. This can be done on the ground. Just make sure that you're using proper safety techniques with a jack stand and jacks. Make sure that the car is, good and firm, so that you're not having any risk of having the car fall off. But we're going to go ahead and get started by taking off the under shroud and the front bumper so that we can get access to where we install the oil cooler itself. Got it. Poor frog. That's disgusting. So far we have done the front, the inner fender wheel wells, the under shroud, and we're about to take off the front bumper. We've removed, there's 2 bolts on each side, driver side, passenger side, and then we're gonna lift the hood right now, and there's just a few clips. Oh, I'm above the locks. There's just a few clips that we pop out, and then we can take the bumper off. We've got these 6 clips here. I'm just gonna use a flathead screwdriver, gently pop these up. If you do end up having some that are brittle and sun-baked or really old and they break, we stock these, so you can just replace these as you're going along. All right, so we have 2 screws that were in the support over here, same on the other side. We have the 6 clips here, and then the under shroud is also what kind of provide the stabilizing support for this front bumper. All of that is off. So now all we're just gonna have to do is just kind of give it a little bit of a love here, and it's gonna should start sliding out. So there actually is a bracket that has a 3rd little bolt on there on each side. We're gonna take those off too. Like that.
Man has a 08 track car and he's talking about his rust.
Oh, I don't like rust. Rust is bad. Now we're going to lift it up, change the oil, and then from that point we can start putting on the thermostatic sandwich plate and start mounting up the Z1 Pro Cooler. Just going to go ahead and drain us some oil real fast. Maybe I should loosen it instead of tighten it. That might be a good thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, we can replace your lower pan while we're here if you want to.
So speaking of things that you can do when you're doing your oil cooler kit, things that are good to do for track as well. We do have an oil pan spacer that you can use to increase your oil capacity. And of course we're going to do the Z1 aluminum under shroud as well when we're putting everything back together. Going to go ahead and take the filter off. This is actually where the sandwich plate is going to mount, and then your filter will attach to the sandwich plate. Always a good idea when you are changing your oil to replace the crush washer. Our oil change kits always come with a new one. We just put them on with that kind of rounded side down with the flat face facing the oil pan. And it's usually you're going to have to take some kind of a razor blade or something to kind of get that crush washer started, because it can kind of get stuck on there. And then once you get it started, just so you can start to thread it off. And then when you put the new one on, you can just kind of thread it on there and get it down to the base. And then it'll press down when you tighten it on. Let's get it on there nice and hand tight. All right, so to get access to the core support where we're gonna mount the oil cooler, you gotta remove our crash bar. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the 4 bolts that hold those in place. It's a 12mm socket. They are kind of recessed pretty far in there, so you're gonna need an extension to get to them. There you go. What, an 8? This is not going to be in the instructions because there's going to be various different styles of intakes that everyone might have on their car, but just to make sure we have the room we need to mount everything up where we want it to be and mock it up the right way, we are going to remove this driver's side intake just temporarily while we mount everything up.
Oh, say less!
All right, so now we're at the point where we're going to mock up the oil cooler on the radiator support. The oil cooler, this bracket, it's got some insulators on here. It's going to sit on here. The orientation of this bracket really doesn't matter on the oil cooler. The oil cooler can sit this way or this way, unless you're OCD like myself and you want the Z1 Pro Cooler logo to be facing, you know, when you're looking at it, be able to read it right. So, which I am, so I'm gonna put it that way. But theoretically, you could have it either way. You just have to make sure you're on the bottom side of where these fittings are gonna go. So we're going to attach this to the Pro Cooler, and then once it's attached, then we can mock up where we want it to be on the radiator support. Okay, so the bracket is attached to the oil cooler. You've got various different access points here where you do have to drill some holes into your core support and do some nut inserts into here to fit the attachments, and there's a few different spots where you can line that up. All right, so included with your contents of your oil cooler kit, you're going to have these little pieces of bracketry here. The way that these are going to be orientated is you're going to attach the bracket here with the welded nut facing towards the fitting of the Pro Cooler, or whichever oil cooler you have. You're going to attach it here, and it's going to have it's got a slide here, so you can kind of adjust it, and then you're going to have this kind of come off at a 90-degree angle off of there, and these are going to attach to, there's a post that comes down the middle of your radiator support those are going to attach to, and then these itself are going to attach to that core support as well. But you want to tighten this one tight, and then these two, I dropped one, these two here, you want to keep these loose when you initially put them on, so that you have the opportunity to kind of mock things up the way you want it, and you don't want to run into the IKEA furniture scenario where you tighten everything too prematurely and then nothing fits. So keep these loose. Get a good close-up of these soft salesman hands.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
All right, so we are going to have to drill some holes here in the core support. The main thing you want to try and do is have this lined up to right about the center of your driver's side opening. You got the left side and the right side, so here on the driver's side you want to be pretty close to being centered, and you want to have it also be pretty level. So I'm just going to go ahead here and make myself some marks. One. All right, so word of caution here. Obviously I have a drill and a drill bit, drilling through some plastic, which on the back side, not too far away, is my radiator. So I do not want to drill a hole in that. So if you do look back through here, you can actually see where it's going to be punching through. And so be very, very slow when you're drilling through there, because this is clearly long enough that if I went all the way in, I would go pretty far into my radiator.
Not your hammer.
All right, I don't even know if I, just a little tap, little love tap, get it in there. We're going to use the supplied riv nut tool that's going to kind of mushroom these out so that they fasten in. Go. All right. So I've got a 17mm wrench that's going to go here on the outside of the tool to keep it from spinning. And then I've got a 14mm deep socket. It's going to go here on the end of the tool. And then I just need to keep it from spinning so that it'll pull that riv nut in and kind of mushroom it against the radiator support. So this piece here, as you saw with here, you're holding it tight and you're tightening it here, and this part is the reverse thread, which is pulling that riv nut in. One more, and then we're going to actually have to install another one up here on the middle of the support for that bracket that comes off at a 90-degree angle. As you can see, I have sprouted a third hand. What we're going to do is, because the condenser is so close in proximity behind this part here, we're going to block of wood back there just to doubly make sure that we're being safe with this drilling. So it jogs to the right. I don't know if you can tell if I'm touching the wood or not.
Nope, you're good. On the wood.
All right, now that we've got it attached to the core support up top, I'm gonna snug these ones up here that are kind of at a 90-degree angle off of the oil cooler, just to kind of keep it stable. Right now they're loose, so I'm gonna kind of stabilize these. And I'm gonna do it so that it's not quite making contact with this, because right behind this little brace is the sensor for your airbag. And just to make sure that there's no issues there, I'm actually gonna need a wrench to tighten that. All right, so we are slightly out of order from the instructions if you're following along with the instructions, but you're supposed to fill the oil cooler before putting it on according to the instructions. Doing it a little bit differently, I've attached it here, and I'm gonna fit one of the fittings in before I go ahead and fill the oil cooler. I'll just use a kind of a tall funnel to fill it from that side. But you've got these two AN fittings here. So I'm gonna install the AN fitting here. You've got kind of a female end here, or a male end. I'm gonna put the, or actually no, technically these are both male ends, but I know my anatomy, okay. This part is gonna be facing up, and this part is gonna be going into the oil cooler. And you're gonna wanna have an AN wrench. Got an adjustable one here that we're using. Should be nice and... All right, so you're gonna have a longer line and a shorter line. The longer line attaches on your driver's side, and you'll notice that there is a different bend in here in these AN fittings that go into the oil cooler and the sandwich plate. This one is a 120-degree angle. That is done on purpose so that it can get a better angle coming into the top of the sandwich plate. You want to have your fittings on the sandwich plate pointing upward, and this is going to go on the sandwich plate. This end is going to go on the oil cooler. All right, so we've gone ahead and filled the oil cooler. When it is on the car, once you have it on there, there is an opportunity to make a mess as you're filling it up towards the top, because you can't really tell where it's going to be topping off at right here when you have a funnel in there. So just do it in small increments, otherwise you might end up with a Niagara oil fall. I'm going to go ahead and put this AN fitting in here on the passenger side of the cooler, and then we can fit the shorter line and move on to the sandwich plate. Go ahead and get the shorter line attached. Again, a reminder to have the 120-degree angled one on the sandwich plate side. Getting ahead of myself. All right, so the sandwich plate, I've gone ahead and lubricated this gasket just like you would with your oil filter. You want to give it a kind of a lubricated surface. There is a insert right here on the sandwich plate that is threaded, and it's threaded on the inside here, and that's what threads onto where your oil filter was, and then it's threaded on the opposite end differently for your oil filter to attach to. It's going to use the same oil filter you used before. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to thread it in here without making everything tight, so that we can adjust it and get it just where we want it to attach the lines to. So here I've got it partially threaded on, but I can rotate it around so that when I connect these lines, I can get it in just the right spot. You want to make sure that you have where you attach the lines facing kind of up here at an angle, not straight up and down, otherwise you'll have clearance issues with your alternator. But you'll want to kind of have it at an angle here. If you have it straight down like this, you'll potentially probably end up having leaking problems. So you're going to want it kind of up here at an angle is probably the ideal spot. Because that adapter is threaded on both ends, we can actually attach these lines with the sandwich plate not on the car, which makes it a little bit easier to get them on in the first place, and then you can kind of adjust it as needed. Want to make sure you get these good and tight so they don't leak. Now that we've got the sandwich plate kind of positioned where we want, it's going to be a 1-inch socket. That's what you're going to use to kind of tighten it down internally with those threads that are on the that are kind of going in where the original oil filter would have gone on. Okay, so we have the oil cooler lines routed and attached to the sandwich plate. Sandwich plate is attached to the oil pan, and we are going to now put the filter on and get the oil in and start putting everything back together. Cool. All right, now that we've got the oil cooler all mocked up and tightened up and installed, oil coolers back on, or the oil filters back on, still need to put oil back in the car, but first we're going to put this intake back in. All right, one of the things, obviously we're adding some oil capacity here, so once you get everything plumbed up and connected and you've added your oil, it's going to start filling things. We did fill the oil cooler, and we partially filled the filter before putting it on. We let the car run just for less than a minute, and it's gonna, now that it's about a quart low, we're just gonna top it off. All right, one of the things about this kit is it's not necessarily specific to a specific platform. Obviously, there's various different versions of the 350Z, whether you have a DE or an HR, you might have different types of intakes. So the length, you're gonna have some slack in here. You might be running forced induction. You might need to kind of write this around charge piping, all kinds of different things. So we didn't necessarily show you the exact way that we routed this one because it's going to vary based on your situation. So the main thing you want to do though is just make sure you don't have, as you can see here, slack hanging down. This obviously would be down in a danger zone of getting hit by road debris, or if you're out on the track and end up causing a leak and having a bad day. So you're going to need to make sure that when you route it, that you kind of, it does come with some zip ties, and you can kind of fasten it in a specific route to get your best connection from the cooler to the sandwich plate. So just make sure that when you're buttoning everything up, back up, that you route it in a way where you don't have too much slack hanging down too low, or that you're not going to be rubbing on anything that's going to cause an issue with your lines. We are going to be installing the Z1 under-shroud after this, which will also help provide some additional protection. That's going to be a better scenario than if it were just the regular old plastic OE under-shroud. All right, we've gone ahead and installed the Z1 under-shroud. You can find the installation process for that on the link provided here. And outside of that, just make sure that once you've got everything on, check for leaks, keep an eye on your oil pressure. But this should be a great product for if you want to start doing stuff on the track. The cars do okay when they're mostly stock on the track, but once you start adding modifications and adding lots of things to get heat in there, you want to find ways to keep it cool, and our Z1 oil cooler is a great way to do that.